Hello and welcome to Reportage with Danish bin Nabi. I am today joined by former External Affairs and Minister for Finance, Mr. Yashwant Sinha. I shall be asking him a wide range of questions from farmers' protest to the leaderless opposition and of course Jammu and Kashmir. Let's listen in. Mr. Sinha, before I begin this discussion, I need your quick comments on the budget that was tabled yesterday in the Parliament.
Well, my first reaction is that it is not a bad budget at all. But, we go by the promises made in the budget. And we are so concerned with what is contained in this budget that we don't even look at the current year's revised estimates and much less what has happened in the previous year. So much will depend on implementation. A lot of promises have been made. Let's see how they are implemented.
Mr. Sinha, let's talk first about the farmers' protests that are presently going on. Do you think by labeling them as anti-national Khalistanis will deter them from protesting?
No, it has not deterred them from protesting so far. And I don't think it is going to do that in future either. I'd like to respond in a little detail as far as the farmers' agitation is concerned. The government in its talks with the farmers' representatives had offered that they are prepared to discuss the three farm laws clause by clause. Now, you don't discuss laws passed by Parliament on the street, clause by clause. They should have done it in Parliament when it was demanded in Rajya Sabha that the bills should be sent to a select committee. The government rejected that demand and forced a voice vote. The opposition kept on demanding a division, which was not allowed by the presiding officer. And therefore, this whole procedure which has been adopted, or which was adopted to...
I wanted to come to it later, but since you have raised this up, let me begin by quoting your recent article. You wrote, and I quote, "There is a much to be said about the manner in which the farm laws were passed by the two houses, especially the Raj Sabha. It is in the clear violation of rules and procedures. Why do you think so?"
This is something which must be understood, at least by people who are generally aware of things happening in this country. It's very important. Parliamentary procedures, as they have evolved over a period of time, enjoin that important bills which are introduced in either houses of Parliament should be sent to the standing committee concerned, or a joint parliamentary committee should be constituted to examine that bill or that issue. Now, you will be surprised to know that as against about over 70% of the legislations which used to be referred to standing committees during the 10 years of UPA, this government reduced that number to less than 25% in its first 5 years. And in the last almost 2 years, it has not referred a single bill to the standing committee, which means that the standing committees have become worthless. They are not examining legislations anymore, which is their primary duty. And these three farm bills, which were very important, were first, as you will recall, were first promulgated as ordinances. Now, an ordinance, as I have said in that article, has to be promulgated only in case of urgent and emergent matters, not something relating to agriculture, for instance, where the problems are well known and old. So that was the first mistake which this government did, to pass these laws by ordinance, and then not sending it to the standing committee was a major mistake and a violation of parliamentary procedure. And then forcing it through the Rajya Sabha without allowing a division was again another I shall say, violation of the rules.
Mr. Sinha, I was looking at a report published by the First Post. It says that about 50% of the recruits come from Punjab and Haryana. 50% of the recruits of the Indian Army come from Punjab and Haryana. So, do you think it's a bit unfair by labeling them as anti-nationals, Khalistanis?
This is labeling them as anti-national or Khalistanis or Tukre Tukre gang or Khan Market gang or Lutyens gang. I mean, these are all undefined terms which the government has never defined. So why not, if they are Khalistanis and Pakistanis or whatever, why doesn't the government take action? Let me make one very clear point to you, that a government cannot make allegations. It's the duty of the government to take action. Opposition can level allegations, media can level allegations, other people can level allegations, but government has to act. They can't level allegations that they are Khalistani. Catch them. Why don't you catch them if they are Khalistanis? And how are these Khalistanis roaming the streets free in this country? So that's all total nonsense, which is being dished out by the government, not worth the paper on which it is printed.
Mr. Sinha, we have seen that many ex-army men are joining these protest sites, the protesting farmers. How worrying is this factor?
Well, as you said a little while earlier, that many of these people who are sitting on dharna near the gates of Delhi are from Punjab and Haryana, naturally, because these are the adjoining states. So, and in Punjab and Haryana, as you said, 50% of the people of our army comes from there, armed forces. And every farmer has somebody in the army. So therefore, if you alienate them, you are alienating not only one person, but you are alienating a whole family, which includes the army man.
Mr. Sinha, do you think there is a need for the government to come to a negotiating terms with the farmers? Because if the protests prolong, it can boomerang into the other states as well.
No, it already is boomeranging. And while they may not be taking to violent street demonstrations or other things, I know that in my state of Bihar, in Patna, there was a huge procession which was taken out in protest against these laws. And I'm aware of the fact that in other states also the farmers are very restive. The point is, there is no scope for negotiation because these farm laws were passed in complete disregard of the farmers' sentiment, and they have been passed in violation of parliamentary rules and procedures. And therefore, the best option is for the government to withdraw these farm laws. And if they want to carry on with it, then refer them to the standing committee concerned on agriculture, the parliamentary standing committee, and then see what happens to them. But I am not in favor of a clause by clause discussion on the street. That should not happen. Making law is the exclusive jurisdiction of parliament in this country. This is what I have said in that article also. And that should not be played around with.
Mr. Sinha, let's move to the other part now. Few days back, you tweeted and said that you are quitting Twitter. Why was it so?
I was getting a little tired of the abuses which were being hurled at me by the bhakts, so-called bhakts, because some people did not like my tweets. And therefore, there was a whole army of abusers, and they were let loose. And I thought that at this age and stage of my life, why should I expose myself to such vile abuses by people who have no idea of what they were talking about. So therefore, I decided that I'll not tweet anymore and I'll quit Twitter.
Mr. Sinha, social media brings me to the mainstream media. In one of your recent interviews, you have said that media is now playing a partisan's role. Your comments?
Well, I said it deliberately because I find that, this term Godi media, media as the lapdog of the government, sitting in the lap of the government. And this is what is happening in this country. And most of the media in this country is controlled by corporates. Corporates have their own business interests to safeguard. And if you have a government which is vengeful, which believes in taking revenge, then they are scared of the government. And the editorial policy of most media houses are not being determined by the editor or the chief editor. They are being determined by the government through the maliks, through the masters and owners of those media houses. And that's why Indian media is now become Godi media and is not able to perform the role which is assigned to it as the fourth state in our democracy.
Mr. Sinha, what do you think about this false or fake narrative that's being peddled by this media, and how is it contributing in decimating the social fabric of the society?
No, you have to come again. I didn't get the question.
Mr. Sinha, you talked about this media. What do you think about the false or the fake narrative that's being built to destroy the social fabric of the society?
It's very, very worrisome because not only the media as we know it, the print media and the visual media, but social media channels are also being used on a wide scale to spread disinformation on behalf of the government and the ruling party. And they are creating all kinds of fissures, divisions in our society. And the most worrisome of those divisions is the communal division. So, a fake narrative of communalism, a fake narrative of nationalism, a fake narrative of patriotism, they have become the staple of this government. And that is dangerous because it is dividing society, because there are many gullible people in our society who tend to believe what the government says.
Mr. Sinha, what is the way out? How can we as a society come out of this false or the fake narrative?
Well, I think, overall, we'll have to wait for the people to wake up. I am a great believer in the power of the people. And I also believe in that old saying that you can't fool all the people all the time. So people are bound to realize that things are not hunky-dory, as they indeed are not. And then they will wake up. And when the next elections come, they will record their verdict. Until then, because it is a democracy that we live in, we'll have to bear with it and continue our struggle in order to ensure that truth prevails and untruth is given a go by in this country.
Mr. Sinha, taking a cue from this, you in one of your interviews recently have said that India is afraid to protest.
I had said it some time ago, before Shaheen Bagh, in fact, in a program in Mumbai, that India and Indians have failed to protest, have forgotten to protest. But after that, the turn of events would convince me that I was wrong, and the people of India have not forgotten to protest. The anti-CA stir, especially at Shaheen Bagh, would prove me wrong as far as that theory is concerned. And now the farmers' agitation is clearly a protest the like of which this country has rarely seen before. So people of India will protest, and that is something which strengthens our democracy. It does not weaken our democracy.
Mr. Sinha, do you think that these farm protests are far bigger than the JP protest which you were part of?
No, I wouldn't say. As far as JP movement was concerned, it enveloped or included all sections of society, and that's why it became so embarrassing for the government. So as far as the farmers' agitation is concerned, I would take it as a very important beginning of a protest movement in India. And I hope that it will snowball into a protest which will include all sections of society. The farmers have already got the support of the youth of this country. They have got the support of the intellectuals of this country. They have got the support of the workers of this country. But it has to be further strengthened, and some of these sections will have to directly participate wherever they are in these protest movements.
Mr. Sinha, talking of the false narrative, the fake narrative, and the media, you have shared an interesting analogy about yourself, and I quote you. You have said that you usually have normal blood pressure, but sometimes it goes below the normal line. Then you start watching TV channels and abruptly it comes back to normal. Can you explain?
Yes, my blood pressure is generally on the low side. I've been an athlete, so even my pulse rate is athletic, as they say, even at this age. But if it goes below a certain level, which is not good for my health, then I watch the Godi media. And when I watch the Godi media, then my blood boils and my blood pressure goes up and normalcy is restored. That's what I had meant when I had said this.
Mr. Sinha, let's move to Jammu and Kashmir now. You have been part of Citizens Working Group. What is the update about your group? Where do you presently stand on it?
It was not a working group. We called it Concerned Citizens
Group.
Concerned Citizens Group. And there were 5-6 of us who took an interest in the affairs of Jammu and Kashmir. And we made many visits, met with many people, came back, and every time we submitted our report to the media, and obviously the government was aware of it. But then the government, we felt, was not prepared to act on our recommendations. Then the catastrophic events took place in Jammu and Kashmir when Article 370 was abolished and the state was broken up into 2 parts and made into union territories. So this was a kind of a surgical strike, which unfortunately this government believes in. A surgical strike which was completely unanticipated. And the government is now claiming that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have welcomed it because there have been no resistance to these moves, forgetting the fact that people don't immediately rise in revolt, especially in a place like Kashmir. The history of Jammu and Kashmir will show that any excess that has been committed there has taken time for the people to respond to. So we don't buy the theory that people of Jammu and Kashmir have accepted what the government has done. But this is what the government narrative is. So a time will come when the government will realize its mistake if this government continues beyond 2024, or some other government will come and rectify the mistake which has been made by this government.
Mr. Sinha, you have said that special status of Jammu and Kashmir should not have been abrogated. Not only Jammu and Kashmir, but the other states of India should also be granted this special status. Why is it so?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I'd like to explain. One is that Article 370 was inserted in our constitution to reflect a solemn assurance which was given by the Indian state to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir. And that was the basis on which the accession of Jammu and Kashmir took place. Now, you can't go back on solemn assurances given in the past. You can't go on correcting history all the time. So therefore, that was as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. As far as extending it to other states is concerned, you are aware of the fact that in our constitution, a special treatment to states is confined not only to Jammu and Kashmir, but it is available to many states in the Northeast. And therefore, we have come to a stage now in our almost 75 years of independent existence that, the complete control, stranglehold, I would say, of the central government over the states and even taking away the autonomy which has been granted to the states by the Constitution of India, by the center, should become a thing of the past. And the state should be trusted, the state should be given more powers and, enabled to look after their own affairs. You're aware of the fact that in the American Constitution, the states have the constitutional right even to secede from the Union. So, and that has not happened. So therefore, to distrust the states and think that Government of India at the central level is the only repository of the, of wisdom is completely wrong. A time has come when we must trust the states, give them more powers, strengthen the federal character of our constitution. And that means extending something like Article 370 to the states of the country. If, for instance, let's say Bihar has a separate flag of its own, how is it going to militate against the unity of this country anymore? So, all this fear psychosis that if you give more power to the states, this country will disintegrate, may have been true 80 years ago. It is not true anymore.
So there should be some sort of autonomy to the other states, not only to the Jammu and Kashmir, but for the other states as well.
Yes, more autonomy should be given to the states. And in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, as I said, it's on a different footing because that was the solemn assurance given by the rulers of India at that time to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I'm deliberately using the word people.
And do you think that it should be restored immediately for the Jammu and Kashmir, the special status?
Yes, it should be. It was entirely wrong to take it away, and therefore it should be restored.
Mr. Sinha, help me in understanding this. You were part of Vajpayee's NDA. Do you think if he had the majority, he would have abrogated the special status of Jammu and Kashmir?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Mr. Vajpayee went to Kashmir, as you are aware, and what did he talk about? He talked about Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat, and Insaniyat. Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat. So what does that show? That shows a liberal approach towards India's policy, Government of India's policy to Jammu and Kashmir. And that was the policy that was followed during the Vajpayee regime. And I'd like to remind you that even this government and the party which, Bharatiya Janata Party, when they entered into an agreement with Mufti Sahab for forming a coalition government, the agenda of that government included a very liberal approach, not only with respect to Jammu and Kashmir, but also with respect to Pakistan. Now, you go back and say all that was wrong. The government of India has never admitted that they were wrong in making that agreement with Mufti Saab and continuing it with Mehbooba Mufti. So, you can't be right all the time. You change your position 360 degrees and you say, I'm still right. How can that be true?
Mr. Sinha, my last question. In your book that was published last year, 2019, not last year, 2019, you have said that professional and personal things should be kept on two different tracks, where you have written and talked about Chandrasekhar, your friend, your colleague. Recently, your son garlanded those people who were accused of lynching Muslims, or we can say the mob. Explain to me, how is your relation with your son? What are the dinner table talks like?
First, your question is in two parts. The first part is, as far as the lynching is garlanding the lynchers is concerned, I would say, because I'm aware of the circumstances, you are not perhaps, and the rest of the world is not. It was a pure accident. Accident in the sense that those guys were released from prison and they came to our place in Hazaribagh, and there were some people who said, "Sir, these people have just come out of prison, so please garland them." And before it could be realized that they were accused of lynching, this happened. So I'll not attach much importance to that. As far as the second part of your question is concerned, at the dinner table we talk there are lots of subjects we can talk about. At the moment, politics is not one of the subjects we discuss, because I treat my children who are adults as adults, and they are entitled to their own opinion, just as I am entitled to my own opinion. So if there is a difference with regard to political understanding of an issue, we'll let it pass rather than break a relationship on that count.
Mr. Sinha, on this positive note, let's end this discussion over here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.